Imagine this: a seemingly boring accountant, a friendly neighbor, a small business owner you'd never suspect. And then, one day, they're on the news, charged not just with fraud, but with murder. How does a money scam, something that starts on spreadsheets and in email chains, end with someone losing their life? In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the darkest evolutions in crime, when financial motives become deadly. We'll look at patterns investigators see again and again: insurance schemes that turn into homicides, Ponzi schemes that explode in violence, business partners who become targets. This isn't about glamorizing killers. It's about understanding the step-by-step path from financial pressure to deception, to panic, and finally to murder. Stay with me as we dissect real scenarios, psychological turning points, and the red flags that might help you spot danger long before it escalates beyond money. Welcome to the channel. Today we're exploring how financial crime can cross the ultimate line, from fraud to murder. When most people hear white-collar crime, they picture spreadsheets, not crime scenes. Yet, behind many homicides lies a financial motive: insurance money, business disputes, embezzlement, or the desperate need to hide a crumbling scam. We're going to unpack the stages these cases often follow, reveal the psychology that drives people from lying to killing, and walk through chilling real-world patterns investigators know all too well. If you're interested in how money, power, and fear can twist human behavior, you're in the right place. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, and stick with me until the end, because the final sections will show you the specific warning signs you can look for in your own life, workplace, or relationships before a financial dispute turns truly dangerous. To understand how fraud turns into murder, we have to start with why people commit financial crime in the first place. Most offenders don't wake up plotting homicide. They begin with pressure, opportunity, and rationalization, a classic fraud triangle. Pressure can be crushing debt, addiction, gambling losses, a failing business, or the need to maintain a certain lifestyle. Opportunity appears when someone controls accounts, insurance policies, or records that are easy to manipulate. Then comes rationalization: I'll pay it back, they owe me, or no one will get hurt. At this stage, it feels victimless, just numbers on a screen. But every forged document, every fake invoice creates a deeper hole. The more money involved, the more people who know, the higher the risk of exposure. That's where the danger begins, when the fear of being caught starts to outweigh moral and legal boundaries, setting the stage for potentially deadly choices later. Once the fraud begins, another powerful force enters: escalation. Small deceptions rarely stay small. An employee alters one invoice, skims a little cash, tweaks a report. When nothing happens, confidence grows. The fraudster upgrades from hundreds to thousands, then to millions. They expand from one scheme to several: fake vendors, falsified loans, forged signatures. Each step creates new victims and new potential witnesses. At some point, they cross an invisible line. They can no longer quietly fix or repay what they've taken. Exposure now means prison, financial ruin, social humiliation, maybe losing family and career. As pressure mounts, they start viewing people not as co-workers or loved ones, but as threats: clients who might ask questions, partners who see irregularities, spouses who notice missing money. In this warped mindset, eliminating a witness, silencing a partner, or cashing in an insurance policy can start to feel like a solution rather than an unthinkable crime. One of the most common bridges between fraud and murder is insurance. Life insurance can turn a loved one into a calculated financial asset. The pattern often starts innocently: a policy taken out for family protection or business continuity. But in some cases, someone realizes that the payout is worth more than the living person. Add in financial desperation, debts, a failing business, hidden gambling losses, and the math becomes horrifying. You see staged accidents, mysterious drownings, sudden house fires, or burglaries that conveniently turn deadly. Sometimes multiple policies are taken out in secret, or coverage is increased just before a suspicious death. Investigators now routinely check policy changes, beneficiaries, and financial stress around the victim. When the grieving spouse or business partner stands to gain a life-changing payout and there's a backdrop of debt or prior fraud, insurance moves from background detail to primary motive, and the line between paperwork and homicide completely disappears. Another dangerous pathway is when fraudsters try to silence people who know too much. Think of an employee who discovers embezzlement, an investor who realizes numbers don't add up, or a spouse who finds secret ledgers. At first, the fraudster might lie, manipulate, or bribe to keep them quiet. But if the witness threatens to go to authorities, or already has, the stakes skyrocket. Years of deception could unravel overnight. In some notorious cases, whistleblowers have disappeared, accidentally overdosed, or met with supposed random violence shortly after confronting the perpetrator. The decision to kill often comes in a moment of perceived cornering. The fraudster believes there's no way out except removing the threat. What's chilling is how methodical some of these acts become, carefully choosing time, place, and method to mimic accidents or suicides. Financial panic transforms into calculated violence, all to protect a criminal illusion built on numbers and lies. Ponzi schemes and large investment frauds are especially volatile. These operations depend on constant new money to pay old investors. When inflows slow, the facade cracks quickly. The fraudster is trapped between collapse and exposure. Investors become suspicious, start demanding withdrawals, or threaten lawsuits. In some infamous cases, victims have confronted schemers at homes or offices, enraged at losing life savings. That emotional volatility cuts both ways. Some perpetrators, overwhelmed by shame and fear, die by suicide. Others, however, react outward. They may target particular investors who could trigger investigations, or family members who discover the truth. There have been murder-suicides where the fraudster kills relatives before taking their own life, seeing death as an escape from disgrace. These aren't crimes of sudden passion. They're the final brutal chapter of long-running deception. The key ingredient is collapse, when the scheme can no longer be sustained, and the fear of consequences becomes more terrifying than the act of killing itself. Corporate environments aren't immune. In fact, high-level fraud often happens inside businesses, where access to money and data is greatest. Picture an executive falsifying earnings, a controller cooking the books, or a partner siphoning funds. Initially, it's about hitting targets, impressing shareholders, protecting bonuses. But once numbers are manipulated, entire careers and companies hang on the lie. If an internal auditor, junior analyst, or co-founder starts asking the right questions, the fraudster may feel their whole professional identity is under siege. Most corporate fraud ends with firings, lawsuits, maybe prison, not murder. Yet history shows rare but shocking exceptions. Assassinations of executives tied to bribery, suspicious deaths of auditors before testimony, or robberies that coincide with internal investigations. In these cases, the workplace becomes a battlefield, and a conference room dispute can have life or death stakes when billions, reputations, and freedom are on the line. Family is often where financial motives become most emotionally charged. Think of inheritance disputes, joint businesses between relatives, or marriages where one partner secretly controls the money. When fraud occurs here, hidden debts, forged signatures on loans, elderly relatives manipulated into changing wills, the betrayal cuts far deeper. Anger, shame, and entitlement mix into a volatile cocktail. Some killers convince themselves they're protecting the family legacy or correcting an injustice. Others see relatives as obstacles to accessing money, or as people who forced them into crime by demanding a certain lifestyle. You'll see siblings fighting over property, adult children impatient for inheritance, or spouses who view a partner's life insurance as an exit from financial disaster. Because emotions already run high, it's easier for someone under stress to dehumanize their own kin. That's why investigators pay close attention to family finances when a sudden, unexplained death occurs inside a household. At the individual level, what pushes someone from financial deception to lethal action? Psychologically, several traits and states commonly appear. There's often high narcissism or entitlement, the belief that they deserve wealth, status, or success regardless of rules. Add low empathy. Victims become numbers, not people. Then mix in acute stress, bankruptcy threats, looming audits, or public exposure. This can trigger what psychologists call cognitive narrowing. Thinking collapses around one goal: avoid consequences at any cost. In this tunnel vision, murder can be reframed as a rational step, especially if they believe it will look like an accident or suicide. Some offenders also show antisocial or psychopathic traits: chronic lying, manipulativeness, shallow emotions. But many are not clinical psychopaths. They're ordinary people whose morality eroded step by step. The critical moment is when preserving the fraud, the lifestyle, or the ego becomes more important than another human being's right to live. From an investigative standpoint, financial records often solve what initially looks like a mystery murder. Detectives today routinely follow the money: bank statements, credit cards, loan applications, insurance policies, corporate ledgers. They look for sudden policy changes, large debts, secret accounts, or unusual transactions around the time of death. A supposedly random home invasion might coincide with overdue loan payments. A sudden car accident might follow a newly increased life insurance policy. Forensic accountants join homicide teams to trace funds, reconstruct fraud schemes, and show juries the financial pressure building before the killing. Digital trails, emails, spreadsheets, message logs can reveal motive far more clearly than emotions alone. When jurors see charts of mounting losses next to a timeline of suspicious events, the story often shifts from tragedy to planned financial homicide. In modern true crime, spreadsheets and bank logs are as important as fingerprints, turning quiet financial desperation into a visible roadmap to murder. Case studies reveal repeating patterns even though each story is unique. You'll often see a struggle phase, financial stress building quietly for months or years. Next comes the deception phase. Fraud begins, small at first. Then the spiral, lies expand, debts grow, more people become entangled. At some point, there's a trigger: an audit notice, a spouse's ultimatum, a whistleblower's threat, an investor demanding proof. That moment forces a decision: confess and face consequences, or escalate. Murder almost never appears out of nowhere. It's the catastrophic endpoint of many smaller, unaddressed choices. Understanding these stages helps us recognize risk earlier. When you see someone living far beyond their means, hiding accounts, or panicking over financial scrutiny, you're watching a storyline that, in rare but real cases, ends violently. The tragedy is that at many points along the way, honesty, help, or accountability could have stopped the trajectory before a life was lost. So where do warning signs show up, and how can ordinary people protect themselves? First, pay attention to secrecy and sudden lifestyle shifts. Someone with modest income suddenly flaunting high-end cars, trips, or luxury goods, yet evasive about how they're paying. Second, notice extreme defensiveness around finances, rage or shutdown when questioned, hidden statements insisting on total control of accounts. Third, watch for risky dependencies, relying on one person for investments, bookkeeping, or access to shared money without transparency. In workplaces, be alert to colleagues who resist audits, work oddly late with financial data, or bypass normal controls. None of these mean murder is coming, but they can signal fraud and the kind of pressure that sometimes leads there. Protect yourself by demanding documentation, splitting financial responsibilities, and taking concerns seriously. If a situation feels off, it's safer to step back, seek independent advice, or even alert authorities before money problems escalate into something irreversibly worse. Let's pull together the key lessons from these disturbing overlaps between fraud and murder. First, financial crime rarely begins violently. It starts with pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. The danger grows as the fraud escalates and the possibility of exposure threatens someone's freedom, status, or self-image. Second, certain contexts are especially high risk. Large insurance policies, collapsing Ponzi schemes, corporate cover-ups, and intensely emotional family finances. Third, psychology matters. Traits like entitlement, low empathy, and rigid pride can make lethal decisions more likely when someone feels cornered. Fourth, money trails are powerful evidence. Following the finances often reveals motives that weren't obvious in the emotional narratives. Finally, prevention lives in transparency and boundaries, asking questions, sharing control of funds, and not ignoring red flags just because someone seems successful or charming. When we understand how money can warp choices, we are better equipped to protect ourselves and those around us. If this deep dive helped you see financial crime in a new light, don't just click away and forget it. Take a second to think about your own world, your workplace, your investments, your relationships. Are there places where money is opaque, where one person holds all the information or power? Those are the environments where small deceptions can quietly grow. On this channel, we unpack the hidden mechanics behind crimes exactly like these, how everyday pressures and choices can spiral into headlines no one ever expects. If you want more investigations that go beyond the sensational details and into the why, make sure you're subscribed and that you've hit the notification bell so you don't miss upcoming episodes. Drop a comment sharing what surprised you most or a topic you want broken down next. And if you found this valuable, consider sharing it with someone who might need a clearer view of how money, fear, and violence intersect.